It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce all of you to both Shurat Hadin and Nitsana Darshan-Leitner. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about Shurat, then introducing Nitsana, who's an amazing individual for a multiplicity of reasons that I'm going to share with you. And Nitsana is then going to talk. Teach us a fair bit, I expect, and not to put any pressure on you, Nitsana. And then I'm going to be able to ask some questions, and that'll be it for this section. So first, Shurat Hadin is the Israel Law Center. It's a legal, non-profit, non-governmental agency based in Israel, and it's really at the forefront of the legal battle against terrorism and worldwide anti-Semitism. Shurat Hadin has proven itself to be dedicated to protecting not only the state of Israel, but Jewry, the Jewish people around the world. Shurat Hadin works with various Western intelligence agencies, law enforcement branches, and a network of volunteer lawyers across the globe, including in Canada, to combat anti-Semitism, extremist hate, and delegitimization. It helps defend the Jewish people and world Jewish community against incitement to violence and some of the really horrific things we see on social media. By fighting terror financing, defending against those undermining lawfare suits, and fighting academic and economic boycotts, as well as challenging those who want to delegitimize the Jewish state, Shurat Hadin utilizes court and judicial systems around the world to go on the legal offensive against Israel's enemies and the enemies of the Jewish people. Now, I first went on a Shurat Hadin tour, I think it's about 10 years ago now. It was amazing. I highly, highly recommend it. They've evolved a little bit since I went on. When I went on, we were able to meet Michael Oren, Benny Begin, intelligence people talking about the situation with Iran, which is now coming to a critical juncture. But even then, of course, it was on the map. We got to go in those days in what seems like a different world to the border and the security area with Gaza, see behind the scenes. We got to watch a trial of stone throwers in Judea or Samaria, meet the Chief Justice there. It was just a tremendous experience, multiple levels of tremendous. Shurat now does, I think, Mossad tours, among other things, and it's really a tremendous opportunity to get an insight into Israel that you would never otherwise be able to get. So that's where I first met Nitsana and was just amazed by the work that she and Shurat Hadin do. Nitsana herself has been a leading voice defending Israel on the global stage for some 20 years now, incredibly. She's the head of Shurat Hadin, which we've talked about. She has developed innovative legal strategies across the board to counter those campaigns we talked about, those that aim to delegitimize Israel, threaten its security. And she's done that in a variety of fronts. She's also worked actively, as has Shurat, against those really anti-Semitic, hateful BDS initiatives, anti-Semitic libels, and hostile actors against the Jewish state and the Jewish people. She holds governments, financial institutions, social media companies, and other organizations accountable by thinking strategically, which is perhaps the most remarkable thing about you, Nitsana, is the strategic thought and then the activation of those thoughts into real action to prevent harms against the Jewish people and against Israel. Some of her successes include a landmark victory against Airbnb that, in a discriminatory fashion, delisted listings in Judea and Samaria, helping to stop a flotilla before it sailed, halting international banking and terror zones, and shutting down various terror-related funding channels. Nitsana is also is also a co-author of the best-selling book Harpoon, which is an amazing book. And it details, just so you know, the cooperation between legal activists, intelligence agencies, and government agencies to financially weaken these essentially terror groups that are so hostile to both Israel and Western values. She has been named among the Jerusalem Post's 50 most influential Jewish people, Marker's 50 most influential Israeli women, and holds a law degree from Bar-Ilan University, as well as an MBA from Manchester University, which then was in a working and thriving England. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Nitsana is she's also the mother of 6 children, including triplets. Where you get the time to do that and look the way you do and act the way you do and think the way you do, I do not understand the level of energy you must have, but whatever you're doing to get there, I'd like the recipe. So without further ado and hesitation, it's my great privilege and honor to introduce you to Nitsana Darshan-Leitner.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Larry, for this beautiful and wonderful introduction. Thank you, Bridges, for peace, that you serve as our best friends. We in Israel support and count on the friendship of the Christian community around the world, and you just prove yourself again and again and again for being there, standing with us, helping us, supporting us, and believing in our right to stay and live safely in our country. So thank you very much for this. In the year of 2000, in the beginning of the second Intifada, blood was spilled on the street of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. I'm a lawyer. I just finished law school. So did my friends. And we thought perhaps we can take a role in the war against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best: go after the pocketbooks of the terror organizations. We realize that money is the oxygen for everything, including terrorism. And if you want to stop the flow of the terrorism, we have to stop the flow of the money. We decided to take the terror organizations to court, something that never happened before. Nobody did it before us. But we were resilient. We thought that we have to fight back against those who want to destroy us, against those who want to murder and kill us one by one. So we filed lawsuits against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Authority. In the United States, we filed lawsuits against Iran for sponsoring terrorism, against Syria. And within 2 years, we started winning in court. We won judgments for hundreds of millions of dollars in our favor. We won unprecedented decisions, both in Israel and the United States. So we were approached by a secret unit in the Mossad called Harpoon. It was headed by the legendary head of the Mossad, Meir Dagan, that also believed that if you want to destroy the terror organization, you have to dismantle their financial infrastructure. And he established this unit, bringing representatives from all the military and security and intelligence forces in Israel, Shabak, Mossad, military intelligence, the defense minister, but having only one aim: to go after the funding, to target this funding, to kill this money. They told us that in the course of their operations, they accumulated so many documents, so much evidence proving how the money is actually going into the hands of the Palestinian terror organizations, that we should utilize it in court. We agreed. Harpoon is no longer a secret unit because we wrote a book about it. You can read about our operations with Harpoon in this book. And we established Shurat Hadin, Israel Law Center, to help and gather the support for this litigation in court. And this is what we're doing since then, representing thousands of terror victims in legal actions and lawsuits against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PLO, against the Palestinian Authority, against Hezbollah, against Iran, Syria, North Korea, against Arab banks, European banks, Chinese banks, Lebanese banks, against Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, for aiding and abetting terrorism. And we've been very successful. We won billions of dollars in judgments and collected a large amount of them on behalf of the victims. We seized Iranian assets, bank accounts, buildings. Give you an example. There is a building in New York in the 5th Avenue called 650 5th Avenue. It's partially owned by the Iranian government. We filed a lien on the building demanding to confiscate the building on behalf of our judgment against Iran. Iran objected it, came to court, litigated the case. Case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and Iran lost. Now the building is being sold for $700 million. The proceeds are going to the terror victims. Banks no longer agree to open bank accounts to designated terror organizations. To give an example, Ella Boucassis was 17 years old when she was walking one day with her brother, 15 years old, in Sderot, when the red alert went off. This is the alarm that goes on when the missiles are falling from Gaza. It was back then in the beginning of the Second Intifada. She had 15 seconds to find a shelter, but it was a street, empty street. There was no building, no bus stop to hide underneath them. So the only thing that went into her mind is to protect her brother. She fell over her brother. She covered him. The missile fell right near their heads. Many shrapnels went into their both head. She fought for 7 days on her life in the hospital. She died. Her brother is disabled for life. We filed a lawsuit against an Asian bank that provided financial services to Hamas at the time. And we got into a settlement agreement with a bank. The father of Ella Boucassis told me, thank you for letting me fight back. Thank you for getting me my integrity back. I feel I'm no longer a victim. And this is what these cases do. No money can bring back life, but money gives a measure of justice, a measure of closure to the terror victims. They feel they no longer victims. Our victory was immediately after we filed the lawsuit, because not only this bank shut down the account for Hamas, this lawsuit sent a shockwave through the international banking system that no bank agreed anymore to open bank account to a designated terror organization. It wasn't worth their whiles. No bank agreed to provide financial services to an Islamic charity that identified with the organization. But most importantly, no bank agreed anymore to operate in terror zones like South Lebanon or Gaza. There are no banking systems in these places anymore. This is why we see them smuggling money in suitcases through the tunnels, but there are no tunnels anymore, through money changers, but they are hunted by the Shabak. Also in Lebanon, Hezbollah has difficulties to bring money in because it doesn't have the international banking system it used to be. And this is the disadvantage of the terror organization. Terror organization, on one hand, his leg is deep in the terror world, but his other leg is deep in the financial world. And if you cut one leg, you can dismantle the other. We have lawsuits against the Palestinian Authority, which I want to tell you briefly about. The first case we filed against the Palestinian Authority was on behalf of two soldiers that made a mistake in Israel, and instead of going to their base in Beit El, wind up in the city of Ramallah. And in Ramallah, they were lynched by Palestinian policemen who took them to the police station and for half an hour beat them and stabbed them to death. When the mob that heard about the fact that there are two Israeli soldiers arrested in the Palestinian police station became arriving immediately, demanding the policemen to bring them down, the two soldiers, they wanted to lynch them. But the policemen, after doing all this work, threw out one of the bodies of the soldiers to the crowd, and over there the crowd ripped up the body to shreds, dragged it to the center of town, and lit it on fire. That was the third case we filed against the Palestinian Authority. And after 20 years of long litigation, we won. We won a judgment for 150 million shekels, equal to $50 million. And we executed it against the tax money that Israel collects for the Palestinian Authority. The terror victims received tens of millions of dollars as a result of this lynching case. But it wasn't enough for me. It was important that the whole world will know who's directing the Intifada, who is responsible for this bloodshed that took place in Israel to perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. So he filed a lawsuit against the Palestinian Authority in the United States. The Palestinian Authority hired lawyers, came to court, and had a defense. Indeed, all the attacks were done by employees of the Palestinian Authority, Palestinian policemen, Palestinian security guards, 417 policemen. But these were rogue employees. They did the attacks after work hours. It wasn't the policy of the Palestinian Authority to kill Jews. They were against killing Israelis. But when the trial opened, they found it hard to explain to the jury. If they were rogue employees, how do you keep paying their salary until today? They're all sitting in the Israeli jail. You pay them compensations on a monthly basis under your pay for slave policy. How do you pay stipends to the families of the suicide bombers? How do you call streets and soccer games and traffic circles on the name of the suicide bombers? This is not how you treat rogue employees. This is not where your policy is against killing Jews. There was no surprise there. The jury came back from deliberation. They found the Palestinians were responsible for all acts of terrorism and gave us a judgment against them for $655 million. The Palestinian Authority was in shock. They fired their boutique law firm from Washington, D.C., hired a new one from New York, and filed an appeal. And in the United States, in order to file an appeal, you have to pass a bond for the entire amount of the lawsuit. Palestinian authorities say that they don't have $655 million to put in the court. So they reached out to the State Department for help. And the State Department under Obama administration helped. They came to court, filed a statement of interest, say that the Palestinian Authority is an essential security asset of the United States in the Middle East. They wanted to keep existing to the side of the Israeli state. They don't want it to go bankrupt. And they asked the court to be considerate. And the court was. Instead of $655 million, the court ordered $10 million bond. And then the Palestinian Authority were free to argue their appeal, but they had only one argument, not against the jury verdict, not against the expert reports, not against the testimonies of the victims. They had technical argument, personal jurisdiction. They said that the Palestinian Authority is not in the United States. They don't have any ties to the United States, and therefore, there is no personal jurisdiction. And the Court of Appeals had a dilemma, because on one hand, we filed this lawsuit based on the Anti-Terrorism Act. This is a US law from 1996 that allows American victims that were killed or injured abroad from a terror attack to bring their case in the United States against overseas terror organizations. On the other hand, the American Constitution demands due process, personal jurisdiction. But having in front of them this letter from the State Department that said in these words or others, no matter what you impose on the Palestinian Authority, they don't have the money to pay, the Court of Appeal went and vacated the judgment. We went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld the decision of the Court of Appeal, did not bring back the judgment to life. So we went to Congress because we don't stop. We never stop. We told Congress that there is a problem. There is a problem because we litigated this case for 15 years based on a very well-intended law that they legislated, but now the court found it unconstitutional. And they have to fix this problem. And the way to fix this problem is to reinstate personal jurisdiction, to create some ties between the Palestinian Authority and the United States. How? To come and declare that if the Palestinian Authority agrees to receive aid from the United States government, That creates ties, and that puts a personal jurisdiction on its place. Congress agreed. They changed the law. President Trump signed up of the law, and the Palestinian Authority announced that they no longer want to receive aid from the United States government. That lasts for only 1 year. After that, they came and needed these payments, received the aid, and we went back to court. In the beginning, we lost. Federal courts say that with all due respect, it's not for Congress to decide what personal jurisdiction is. It's up to the court. But when we went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, in an unprecedented decision, reinstated personal jurisdiction. The Supreme Court said that the fact that the Palestinian Authority pays money to the murderers of American citizens imposed liability on them, imposed personal jurisdiction on them, and we are back with this judgment. In the end of the day, the Palestinian Authority will pay $655 million to American terror victims, the same way they paid hundreds of millions of dollars to Israeli victims. And after this decision, the Palestinian Authority announced that they no longer continue with a pay-for-slave policy. Hold on, hold my tongue. I'm laughing the same way you are, because we know, and we heard it from Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, who said that even if the Palestinian Authority will be left with $1 less, it will go to the jihadists. It will go to the martyrs, the ones who sacrificed their life fighting the Zionists. But it showed that the Palestinian Authority took this judgment into consideration and will rethink the policy again. October 7th, we received a phone call again to join the war. And we immediately found ourselves in 3 different fronts. One front is to dismantle Hamas. As I said before, even if the IDF will kill any terrorist and will destroy the tunnels of Hamas and will eliminate all its weapons and missiles and rockets and hand grenades, Hamas remains as an idea. And very quickly, Hamas from Judea and Samaria, Hamas abroad, will crawl back to Gaza and rebuild itself. So the only way to confirm that Hamas will no longer be able to do it is to cut any funding that goes to Hamas. So we file lawsuits against anybody who funds Hamas. The Palestinian Authority that gives them $1 billion a year. Indeed, innocent money. $1 billion that go to the education ministry in Gaza, to the health ministry in Gaza, to projects in Gaza, humanitarian sources, you would say. But Hamas is the government in Gaza. Hamas is the one that collects the tax money in Gaza. Hamas is supposed to take care of this infrastructure in Gaza. If somebody else pays for it, Hamas has free $1 billion to divert to its military operations. And this is how they were able to bring in Gaza tens of thousands of rockets and missiles and launchers and to build their underground city of tunnels. No more. No more. We are suing the Qatari charity foundations for supporting the Hamas in Gaza. We're suing Binance, the cryptocurrency exchange that ignored all Israel's warning and allowed Hamas to raise funds on cryptocurrency companies utilizing wallets that belong to Hamas service. But we also went after the Red Cross for abandoning the hostages. We all know that the hostages needed so dearly the visits of the Red Cross. We know what they were been doing, going through, the tortures, we know the rape, we know all of it. But we didn't have to wait until the hostages were released. Right back then, after October 7th, we knew what the terrorists will do to our hostages. So we immediately approached the Red Cross and demanded them to go and visit the hostages, but the Red Cross refused. Prime Minister Netanyahu met with the president of the Red Cross, gave her a box of medicine, asked her, begged her to take it to the hostages in Gaza. And the president of the Red Cross refused and wished Netanyahu good luck. So we sued the Red Cross in court. But we also sued UNRWA. UNRWA, a UN organization that its goal was to help the Palestinian refugees, turned to a Hamas faction. We know it all these years, but in October 7, UNRWA actually participated in the massacre. We represent Jonathan Semerano, a 21 young guy that went to the Nova Music Festival. And in 6:30 in the morning, when the missiles were falling from Gaza, he, along with the 3,000 participants, young men and women, beautiful young men and women, ran for their life. He reached out to Kibbutz Be'eri. He got up to the fence, but wasn't able to go in and was killed by the terrorists. And then 2 employees of UNRWA came along, grabbed his body and put it into UNRWA vehicle and kidnapped him to Gaza. And during the war, we saw that UNRWA is participating alongside with Hamas in the war against Israel. In every facility of UNRWA, every kindergarten, every school, every medical center, we found tunnels, we found launchers, we found missiles. The head of UNRWA said he didn't know, but it makes some noise to dig a tunnel underneath your office or to see piles of launchers in the office nearby. So we sued UNRWA on behalf of the Semeranos family. This is one front. The other front is the media front. How important is public opinion we learned on our life and war and state during October 7? Because when the headlines of the New York Times scream Israel commits genocide and commits war crimes and impose starvation, intentional starvation in Gaza, and the BBC comes and say Israel is a war criminal, no wonder the President Biden will keep its weapon from Israel and force Israel not to continue with the war, not to go into Rafah, and as a result of it, extend the war for 2 years. No wonder that Europe is going after Israel and demanding to stop the war as a result of October, of the media bias against Israel. So we went after the media outlets. First, we went after Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, we know, is the tool of Hamas. It's the newspaper or the TV outlet that just gives Hamas a voice and influence so bad the public opinion. Now, we know there is a problem because Al Jazeera will come and say, we are a TV, we have freedom of speech, freedom of communication, we can't be sued. But we are coming not because what Al Jazeera says, but for providing material support to a designated terror organization. We come and say that the Anti-Terrorism Act of the United States prohibits anyone in the United States to support in any way a terror organization, to provide material support to a terror organization. And we believe, and this is what we argue in our lawsuit, that Al Jazeera crossed the line. And once it crossed the line, there is no defense of freedom of speech against terrorism. But we're also going after the New York Times, not in a civil lawsuit, but in a criminal complaint, to come and prove that the New York Times, knowing that there is no starvation in Gaza, see yourself. The second there was a ceasefire in Gaza, suddenly there are no allegations of starvation. Where did it go? There's no genocide. Where did it go? War crimes, where did they go, all this? So we're going after the New York Times. And the third front we are fighting is the war crimes allegation against IDF soldiers. And I believe this is the most dangerous one. The war in Gaza may be over, maybe not. Hamas is still on, but President Trump has a dream of building the board of peace and making Gaza a Singapore of the Middle East. Let it be. But there are still countries around the world that threaten IDF soldiers with war crimes allegations and arrest warrants as a result of it. And here he came and launched an app called Shahbaz, Flag Jackets. This is an app that gives information to any soldier, any reservist that leaves Israel to how to handle when you go abroad. Instructions, how to deal with social media pages, what to do if you, God forbid, get arrested. We have a legal war room, Larry, you're part of it, that is willing to provide legal aid in case a soldier will get arrested. But mainly, we are going after the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor, Karim Khan, for aiding and abetting Hamas. And this is a crazy story. You will not believe it. Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor, before October 7th, announced that he is going to investigate Israel for war crimes for things that they did in 2014 in Gaza, in the Protective Edge operation. Israel was furious, and Karim Khan was persona non grata in Israel. October 7th happens. Karim Khan asked to come to Israel to learn in his own eyes what happened. Israel, knowing who we're dealing with, refused to let him in. But then he approached the families of the hostages privately and asked them to come and visit them and promised them that he came with well intentions to help their case. So they invited him to come in. And he came and he met with the families and he went to all the kibbutzim and he went to the border of Gaza and he spoke to the first respondents and came back to the families and promised them that he would do anything in his power to help their case. But when he went back to The Hague, he issued arrest warrants not against the Hamas leaders who are controlling Hamas, like those who are sitting in Doha. He went and filed war crime complaints and arrest warrants against Israeli leaders, against the Prime Minister Netanyahu, and against the Defense Minister Gallant. Indeed, to make it equal, he issued arrest warrants against the terrorists who are hiding in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Def, who after a couple of months were killed by Israel. And in any event, did not care about any arrest warrants because they are not coming out of the tunnels. But instead of really helping the hostages, and instead of going after the heads of Hamas in Doha, as we asked, because we knew, as was proven later on, that only if you make the leaders of Doha insecure and you show them that they have no immunity and you can go after them, only then they will push Hamas in Gaza to release the hostages. And that's exactly what happened. When Israel hit Doha and tried to kill the leaders of Hamas in Qatar, only then suddenly Hamas came to the negotiation table and agreed to release the hostages without preliminary conditions. So this is what we're doing. The war against Israel continues everywhere. The war against the Jews escalated to a level that we have never seen before, including in Canada. Canada was a quiet country many years ago. Slowly, the anti-Semitism went in until October 7, which caused it to explode. We see universities in Canada that have the SGP and other youth movements and other student organizations just burning the campuses. Jews are not secured in Canada anymore. But most dangerous is Canadian authorities going after IDF soldiers that have Canadian citizenship and interrogating them and asking them questions where they were serving. There is a website in Canada, the Maple, that now put on their website locations of schools, Jewish schools, synagogues, other Jewish institutions, name them with streets and addresses and phone numbers, alleging that they are helping the IDF, helping Israel, and basically committing war crimes. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. And this is why we are so thankful for you guys to come and help us in the war. And we call every one of you to join the war, to do anything they can, to protest, not to keep quiet. The Torah told us, "Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa." Don't stand idly by your brother's blood. We will not stand idly by our brother's blood. We cannot afford it. The state of Israel cannot afford it. And the friends of Israel from all over the world cannot afford it. In the end of the day, Israel is fighting for its survival. Indeed, we had tremendous victories in Lebanon, soon in Iran, in Syria, in Gaza, but the war is yet to be over. And if we're fighting for our survival, I can guarantee you that we will win because we don't any other choice. Thank you very much.
That was amazing. I can't hear what's going on in Winnipeg. I presume they're applauding. They should be, but I don't know. I'm here in Netanya. I do want to ask you a few questions. We have a little bit of time. We have, I think, about 20 minutes or so. And I guess the first thing I would say, which isn't a question, is from my perspective, fighting that wave of anti-Semitism is actually, for me, about fighting for Canadian values, the historic Canadian values, not the corruption of the Canadian values that we see has happened recently over the last number of years with a flow of immigration from people who want to bring foreign conflicts to Canada instead of leaving them behind, which used to be the case. So I see it that way. But let me ask about that, and I'll ask some more specific and some less specific questions. Section 8318 of our criminal code says that every person who knowingly participates in or contributes to, directly or indirectly, any activity of a terrorist group for the purpose of enhancing the ability of any terrorist group to facilitate or carry out a terrorist activity is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 10 years. Now, that's a criminal offense, not
Right.
civil liability, which
Right.
is what you're dealing with. But is that most of your actions have been, if not, I can't say all, but most of the legal actions have been in the United States or in Israel. Is there an avenue in Canada to deal with some of what we're seeing when we have, you mentioned the BBC, but we have the CBC, which is at least as bad, that consistently, frankly, defames and libels against Israel, or at least arguably does. Is there an avenue in Canada for any of what Shurat Hadin does?
So I'll tell you, perhaps I will start with the state-sponsored terrorism, because aiding and abetting terrorism is a crime in United States and in Canada. And in Canada, as the United States, it imposed civil liability as well. I remember 20 years ago when I first went and spoke in Canada, I was approached by young lawyers that said they want to imitate what United States has. There is no reason why Canada should not have laws that impose liability on state-sponsored terrorism. Why in Canada, these countries would be immune from lawsuits? So they went and changed the law in Canada. It took them 10 years, but eventually under Trudeau, they were able to pass it. And now Canadian citizens that get killed in terror attack can bring a lawsuit against Iran and Syria, which are still listed in the watch list in Canada, or there are designated state-sponsored terrorism against these countries in the Canadian courts. I'm afraid that now, after Giuliani, Syria will be taken off this list, or Syria will be redefined, perhaps not designated, as President Trump did to Syria in the United States. So we still have Iran. That's one venue for Canadian victims. Your question is focused on organizations or media outlets that are aiding and abetting terrorism organization, which could be a criminal offense according to the penal code in Canada. I believe that if you in Canada have the breach of statutory duty and aiding and abetting terrorism is a violation of a statutory duty, you can bring a lawsuit against these institutions or organizations that are aiding and abetting terrorism. However, you need to prove causation. You need to prove that the support, the material support that your target organization provided, the terror organization, really enhanced the terror attack that happened on behalf of your client, on behalf of the victim. And this is very hard to prove. We claim that money is fungible. So if we know that there is a bank that helped to wire money to a designated organization, perhaps you can come and say money is fungible, so this money served the organization with this terror attack. But in the United States, you have to prove intention on behalf of the bank. You have to show that the bank participated in the goals of the terror organization, meaning that although money is fungible, you still have to show not only knowledge, but real intention. And if you're talking about material support, like weapon, like shelter, like safe haven, you have to prove that this specific material support came and served the terror organization. And regarding media, that's the hardest of them all. Again, if you show that there is a terrorist that read or listened to the CBC and got inside as a result of it and went and carried the attack, you can certainly sue, but not as a public, as you well aware, or as a state or a community. Only individuals that you can really show the causation. That's the difficulties in these cases. But if you win, that's a tremendous victory.
It is, of course. But so you've been way more active, obviously, in the United States and in Israel, not in Canada. Is there something about the structure of our legal system that suggests let's not pursue that in Canada? Let's deal with it in the United States? Is there a political climate, or is it a legal issue or something else?
It's complex, but I can tell you, first of all, in the United States, there are specific laws for anti-terrorism code. There is the Anti-Terrorism Act that allows American citizens to bring lawsuits in the United States against overseas terror organizations. There is JASTA that allows American victims to bring lawsuits in the United States against local terror organizations. There is the exception for the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act that allow American victims to sue foreign states. So there are specific laws that allows our proceeding to go on in the United States. In Israel, we also have specific laws, special laws that recently was legislated to bring lawsuits against the Palestinian Authority or anybody that has a declared policy of compensating terrorists for their acts of terror. And we also have the tort law that which is a little bit harder because here you have to show liability and causation. So when most of your victims are from Israel or from the United States, these are the venues that we are picking. In Canada, if we have Canadian citizens, and in the beginning of the road, we did have some Canadian citizens, we filed lawsuits against Iran utilizing this new legislation. But again, you have to pick up the case, you have to have the evidence, and you also need the right lawyers to go with you. I can tell you it's not easy to find your co-counsel in foreign countries. The cases are long-term. They require a lot of work, a lot of attention, and they're all worked on contingency basis, meaning if you win in the end of the road, you'll get compensated. If not, you volunteer and you donated many hours, maybe tens of thousands of hours towards this case. This is something that not every Canadian lawyer or in general will agree to do.
Just so people know, the legislation, Sana, that you're talking about is the Justice for Victims of Terrorism Act, and it exists. It's kind of similar, but all your points are appreciated. Let's go back. You talked about that horrible incident where the two soldiers ended up in a Palestinian town or village or whatever, and there are really no words to describe what happened to them. But then I think it was last year, we saw at the Oscars various actors with red hand buttons, which is exactly the symbol that was used there. That's what they did when they had their hands out the window. Is there some method of compensation? Is it even worthwhile to think about that? Or is it something we just have to live with, that promotion of hate and terror?
That's completely protected by freedom of speech, unfortunately. They are despicable, these people who are using these bloody hands. Unfortunately, it became a token of if you want to show that somebody is dancing on the blood of somebody else, you just show this picture with these bloody hands of someone reaching out from a window from a second floor. Indeed, you're right, it was a horrific picture, and we all saw the video of the terrorist throwing the body of the soldier from the second floor. That helped us a lot in our lawsuit, showing that indeed it was done by Palestinian policemen and therefore it inflict liability on the Palestinian Authority. I wish anybody who would support terrorism, even with raised bloody hand, would be arrested. Unfortunately, this is not the case.
Just an interesting aside for people, Manitoba is the only jurisdiction that has a group libel section that prevents group libel against a religious group or a national group or sexual orientation for that matter. It came about in the 1930s by a Jewish member of the Legislative Assembly, Mr. Hyman, who went against a Nazi publication back then. It was unanimously passed in our legislature, and we're the only jurisdiction, certainly in Canada, can't speak for elsewhere, that allows one to take an action in the Court of King's Bench against anyone who libels a religious creed or national group or sexual orientation. It's a very interesting section.
It is very interesting. It is very interesting.
We're the only ones. The question is, would that be applicable on the internet? But that's just a droplet so that people in the audience can know that how amazing Manitoba was in 1930s, and that's still on the books today, that theoretically could be used in the right circumstances. So let's jump back for a second. One of the big claims that we hear, that I would say Israel and the majority of Jewish people and supporters of Zionism, Christian, Jewish, or otherwise, here, is that Israel committed genocide. So can you, or is committing, I suppose, can you talk about the definition of genocide a little bit and how this impacts both on the ICJ and the ICC, and what can be done about those really defamatory or libelous claims, at least in my view? It's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Genocide is an intentional act of murder against massive people. And during the years, or I would say during the war, people expanded this expression to catch Israel in genocide. Why? Because if you talk about intentional act of murder against a mass people, Israel, you cannot prove that Israel killed civilians intentionally. Indeed, Israel, during its operation, damaged a lot of civilians. I'm not talking about numbers because nobody believes the numbers that are coming out from Gaza, which are all Hamas numbers. But there is no doubt that there were a lot of civilians, children, elderly, women, men killed in the operations that Israel took in Gaza. But why? What was the reason for these casualties, for these mass casualties? This is the conduct of Hamas. Hamas, when he wants to fire rockets into Israel, or when he wants to go and ambush IDF troop in Gaza, or when he wants to go and snipe IDF soldiers, he hides among civilians. He hides in civilian buildings, in schools, in kindergartens, in neighborhoods. He goes to hospital and build their headquarters there. He's acting among civilians, he's surrounding himself with civilians, knowing that either Israel will be afraid to retaliate because there will be civilian casualties, or if Israel dare to retaliate, there will be casualties which Hamas will come and take to the entire world and blame Israel for killing them. So the conduct of Hamas is a violation of the international law, because according to international law, you are not allowed to act among civilians. And if you're acting among civilians, the responsibility of the casualties of the civilians that you surround yourself with lays on you, not on the other side that retaliates back, as long as the other side took all measures possible to protect the civilians. And there is no question that Israel, before they target civilian infrastructure, they go and warn the people. They drop flyers from the air telling them to vacate the building. They make phone calls, they send SMS. I never saw any military in the world acting like this, but this is what Israel did. Smartly, not smartly, raising the level. You know how much criticism Israel received from allies, from Britain, from the United States, for raising this level of scrutiny of actions taken before they go and strike a civilian military. And when I say civilian military, I'm wrong to the definition, because once a hospital becomes a headquarters of Hamas, it turns to a military target. And therefore, Israel has all rights to hit it. So now these people come and say, those who are against Israel, come and say, okay, so maybe Israel did not kill intentionally the civilians, but look, they did hit civilian facilities. They did come and crush buildings. They did came and invade hospitals. And this is expansion of the expression genocide, because genocide is the elimination of the population in the place. And here you go. You don't have to kill them, but you can destroy all the civilian infrastructure in order to make their life miserable. On top of all this, add the intentional starvation that our enemies claim that we did in Gaza. Obviously, nobody can deny the number of trucks bringing hundreds of tons of food into Gaza. There is no denial. Recent research showed that the population in Gaza received in the past 2 years 4 times the amount anybody could have eaten during these 2 years, 4 times the amount. And yet there are claims for starvation. Why? Because none of the food reached the people. And why all the food did not reach the people? Because Hamas was tackling the trucks. Hamas was stealing the food. Hamas was attacking those who brought the humanitarian aid and take it to himself and then go and sell it in the free market and deny it from the population. So anybody who claims that Israel commit genocide, war crimes, or starvation in Gaza is lying to the truth, is saying the wrong thing. And this is what you have to explain to people who blame Israel for genocide. Israel did not commit genocide. As in a matter of fact, the one who committed intentional genocide was Hamas, because they knew that by utilizing their civilians, they turned them into targets and they wanted them to die. Yahya Sinwar said again and again, I don't care about the population. The more people killed, the better the situation is for Hamas, because you take these pictures, you spread them all over the world, and then the world now sees babies are getting killed in Gaza and put pressure not on Hamas, on Israel. And this is the asymmetrical war that we are fighting. You can't win in this situation when there is a country that honors the international law, that know that there will be implication for violation of international law, versus a terror organization that doesn't care about anything because it knows that nobody can touch it and no international law can put it in prison behind bars. That causes an asymmetrical war, which is very, very difficult to win. However, international law does not stop countries from winning. We have to fight international law, the expansion and the interpretation of the international law, the same way we fight the terror organization that hides underneath it.
Thank you for that. I just want to add a couple things if I could. One is that one of the critical elements of genocide in the law is intention to destroy a people. And that, of course, is there. The other thing I wanted to add is that, Canada was involved in the Afghanistan war in Kandahar. And the government of Canada has specifically not released and not allowed to be released any statistics on how many civilians were killed in Canadian operations there. I'm not saying that was a genocide, quite the opposite. But the fact is that while Canada hides that, the current government of Canada makes all sorts of accusations. Meanwhile, Hamas, as I read, has released that they have to pay 50,000 widows of fighters, which really, if that's true, which who knows, that means that 50,000 were fighters of however many were killed, which is the lowest ratio civilian to combatant deaths ever in urban warfare. Don't believe me, but believe Colonel John Spencer and Colonel Kemp. So it's very interesting, very contradictory. I wish we could go on. It's 11:27 in Winnipeg, not where we are. And so just to leave people with hope, the final question, if I can have leave to do that, is how can people in Winnipeg and Canada help to move forward? What can they do to assist in? And I would say it's not for Canadian. It shouldn't be for Canadians about fighting for Israel. It should be about fighting for Canadian values, because in my view, if the government of Canada attacks Israel for committing genocide with a lesser, which it has, a lesser civilian to combatant ratio, and this nonsense of genocide and funding the Palestinian Authority to the tune of almost $500 million, it's really, we should be fighting for Canadian values, which are, as Jean Chrétien once said, they are Israel's values. They are Jewish values, unlike the current prime minister, who said quite something different. So my question for you is, what can we do? What can Canadians do to help in the cause? Because it is a fight for Western values.
100%. Canadian people should always, always remember that the fight for Israel is a fight for their own country. Israel is just the gatekeeper. Israel happened to be in the Middle East, and Israel is close to the terror organization where they are. And Israel is fighting the war for the entire West, because if, God forbid, Israel will collapse, the terrorists will go west. And west is Europe, and west is the United States, and west is Canada. And we already see that willingly the Canadian government, year after year, allowed these Muslims to go into Canada to become residents, to become citizens, and we see the number of threats of trial of terrorism taking place in Canada. So every Canadian citizen have to believe that first, in the war between evil and good, good will win. Israel will win. Israel show the resilience. Israel show that it's been fighting 7 fronts, something that no country have ever done. And fronts and militaries and terror organizations that cause real amount of damage. 1,200 people massacred in one day is a tremendous damage to the state of Israel. 80,000 people that have to vacate their houses in the north from being fired from Hezbollah's missiles is a tremendous damage to the state of Israel. And nuclear system and ballistic missiles that serve as a threat to the existence of the state of Israel is a damage. And Houthi that shoot ballistic missiles day after day after day to Israel is a damage, is a threat. And Palestinians that live among the Israel cities in Judea and Samaria as cancer in our heart is tremendous threat. And Israel will fighting all these fronts at once and not survived, but won them over. So rest assured that Israel is here to stay forever. And if you want to be in the right side of the history, join Israel. Fight for it. You're fighting for the truth. You're fighting for the moral. You're fighting for the right cause. And you're fighting for your own family and well-being.
So Nitsana, thank you. I would say that just from my perspective, at least, that, and maybe from yours, I'm not sure. We've never talked about it. That it's the political Islamization that the Muslim Brotherhood thought process and similar thought process that's the problem, and it is a problem everywhere in the West and certainly in the Middle East. So anyway, that said, Nitsana, thank you so much. What you do is brilliant, and we didn't even talk about how you managed to parent 6 children at the same time.
I have 3 kids. I have 3 kids in the army now, out of the 6, and we all pray for them and for the entire IDF and all the soldiers in Israel that they will go for peace and will come back in peace and fight for us and help us to live safely in this country.
Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Nitsana, thank you, Lawrence, for bringing
Thank you very much
to us. We'll be making a generous donation to Shurat Hadin on behalf of all of you. And if you want to make an additional donation, they have a website, Shurat Hadin. You can just go on there and make a donation.
Thanks very much, Don. All the best.